Before we begin, hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to hear isn't fiction, it's real. It's terrifying, and it's the kind of story that reminds us that sometimes the most dangerous places aren't the ones we fear. They're the ones that look peaceful. This is the story of a woman who walked into the mountains and never came back. On a quiet November morning in 2020, 37-year-old Esther Dingley zipped up her hiking jacket, adjusted her yellow backpack, and smiled for a quick selfie. The camera caught her standing at the edge of the Pyrenees Mountains, the massive chain dividing France and Spain. Behind her, the peaks were covered in frost, glowing under a cold sun. To anyone else, it was just another travel photo, another moment of adventure in a life full of them. But for Esther, that morning would mark the beginning of something else. Her message to her boyfriend, Dan Colgate, was short and cheerful. "Might do pick to Sovgard today," she wrote. "Looks beautiful. I'll check in before dark." It was a normal text, casual, comforting, but it would be the last one she ever sent. Esther wasn't a beginner. She and Dan had spent years traveling through Europe in a camper van, living off the grid, exploring wild places. They called themselves the adventurous couple, and their life looked perfect. But behind that perfect image were cracks, emotional distance, stress, and quiet doubts about their future together. That day, as Esther packed her gear, she told herself the hike would clear her mind. It was supposed to be a day of reflection, reset. She parked her van near the trailhead, checked the weather, and began the climb. Locals who saw her remembered a smiling, confident woman with kind eyes. She waved as she passed a group of French hikers, asking how far it was to the top. The mountains were calm, silent except for the crunch of snow beneath her boots. Somewhere between 1 and 3 p.m., Esther reached the summit of Pic de Sovgard. She took several photos, selfies with her hiking poles and panoramic shots of the endless ridges stretching in every direction. Her final Instagram post showed her sitting on a rock, sunlight breaking through clouds behind her. The caption read, "I feel so alive, so free." It was haunting in hindsight. When the sun set that evening and no message came, Dan wasn't worried at first. Esther often camped overnight, but by the next morning, something felt off. Her phone was silent. No GPS ping, no WhatsApp, no Instagram updates. By the second day, Dan called local authorities. Search and rescue teams mobilized quickly. Helicopters, drones, dogs, and volunteers covering every inch of the mountain. Her van was still parked at the trailhead, locked, untouched. Inside, her journal sat open on the bed, her food neatly arranged, her clothes folded. It was like she had planned to return that evening. Investigators studied the area around her van. No footprints leading away, no tire marks, no sign of a struggle. That told them one thing. Whatever happened to Esther, it didn't happen there. The focus turned to the trail itself, an isolated stretch of wilderness that winds through valleys and rocky passes between France and Spain. The terrain is beautiful, but deadly if you slip. Teams scoured ridges, crevasses, and snowfields. Helicopters circled the summit, but day after day, nothing appeared. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. A local shepherd reported seeing a woman matching Esther's description near the mountain pass around 2 p.m. on November 22nd. She looked happy, relaxed. That matched the timestamp on her Instagram photo, the last sign of her existence. Beyond that, there were no witnesses. For 9 days, the Pyrenees echoed with the sound of search helicopters, dogs barking, and voices calling her name. The weather turned colder. Snow began to fall. Still nothing. On social media, the story exploded. Headlines called her the woman who disappeared into the mountains. Dan posted daily updates, pleading for help. "Esther is strong, smart, and prepared," he wrote. "She's out there somewhere. I know it." But behind his optimism, doubt crept in. The rescuers began to lose hope. When a person goes missing in the mountains, you look for traces, footprints, scraps of clothing, disturbed snow, anything. With Esther, there was nothing. It was as though the land had swallowed her whole. And then came a discovery that deepened the mystery. Inside her journal, which Dan had photographed weeks before, Esther had written about her mental state. "I feel both exhilarated and empty," she wrote. "Dan wants to settle, and I want to roam. I'm not sure we're walking the same path anymore." The media jumped on those lines, suggesting that perhaps her disappearance was deliberate. Did she walk away from her life? Was it an accident, or something darker? Dan dismissed the idea immediately. "She was the happiest I'd ever seen her," he told reporters. "She wouldn't just leave." Yet the tone of her last entries haunted him. Search teams continued for weeks until the weather forced them to stop. By December, the Pyrenees were blanketed in snow. The official report listed her as missing, presumed lost. The mountain closed for winter, and Esther's story faded from the headlines. But for Dan, it never ended. He refused to go home. He rented a small cabin near the base of the mountain and kept searching, hiking the same trails over and over, calling her name into the cold wind. Locals began to call him the Ghost of the Pyrenees, because every morning he appeared at sunrise with maps and binoculars, retracing her steps. Months passed, the seasons changed, and then, in late July of 2021, 8 months after Esther's disappearance, a French hiker discovered a bright yellow object near a rocky ridge. It was a backpack. Search teams were alerted immediately. When they arrived, they found Esther's ID, her phone, and a small bag of almonds inside. Everything was dry and clean, as if it had been untouched by weather. Nearby, a few bones lay scattered beneath a cliff. DNA tests confirmed it. It was her. Her remains were found less than a mile from the summit. Authorities announced that Esther likely slipped, fell, and died instantly. The case was closed as an accident. But the story didn't end there. Journalists, mountaineers, and even members of the search team began to question the official explanation. First, the location. Search teams had combed that exact area during the initial rescue effort. Not once, but twice. They found nothing. How could her remains suddenly appear months later, in a place that had already been checked? And how had her backpack and phone survived snow, rain, and wind, looking almost new? Some speculated that snow had covered her body during winter, hiding it until the thaw. Others believed someone had moved her belongings. One investigator admitted off record, "Something doesn't sit right. It feels placed." The discovery reignited the mystery. Online communities dissected every photo, every report. Some pointed to her journal, suggesting emotional distress. Others claimed there might have been someone else on the mountain. A few even theorized she met someone during her travels, someone who followed her. But there was no proof, just endless speculation. Dan returned to England briefly, exhausted and broken, before coming back to the Pyrenees, once more to retrieve what was left of her. In an emotional statement to the media, he said, "The mountains took her, but they didn't take her spirit. She found peace where she felt most alive." He later scattered some of her ashes at the summit of Pic de Sauvegarde, the place she last smiled for the camera. Even after the case was officially closed, whispers continued. Local guides spoke of strange sounds at night, lights seen near the ridge long after dark, and hikers who claimed to feel watched along the same trail. Rationally, it was just folklore, but emotionally, it added to the legend. Esther Dingley became more than a missing person. She became a symbol, a reminder of the thin line between freedom and danger, between solitude and disappearance. To this day, hikers who climb that mountain often stop near a small memorial stone placed in her memory. It reads, "For Esther, who found peace in the wild." Many leave flowers or notes, messages from strangers who never knew her but felt connected to her story. And still, one question remains unanswered. Why did her remains appear when they did? Could it really have been the snow all along? Or did someone know exactly where she was and decide to end the mystery when attention faded? The French and Spanish authorities maintained their stance, accidental fall. But the mountain, as locals say, holds its secrets. The Pyrenees have seen travelers vanish for centuries. Some are found, some are not. For Dan, the silence that followed her discovery was worse than the months of searching. Because when you have no answers, you can still hope. But when you're told it's over, what do you do with the questions that remain? He left the mountains one final time, but never stopped speaking about her. In interviews, he describes Esther as vibrant, brave, and gentle, a woman whose love of nature defined her life. "If she had to go," he once said quietly, At least she was somewhere she loved. Today, her story continues to draw attention from true crime researchers, hikers, and documentarians around the world. Not because of conspiracy theories, but because of what it represents: the fragility of adventure, the unpredictability of nature, and the thin, haunting line between life and disappearance. And maybe, in the end, that's why her story lingers. Because deep down, we all understand what it means to walk into the unknown, to chase freedom, to trust the path ahead, and to never imagine that one day, that path might not lead back home. Somewhere in the Pyrenees, where the wind whistles between stone ridges, her story remains. Not as a headline, not as a mystery, but as a warning. Freedom has a price. Solitude has a voice. And sometimes, the mountains keep what they take. If this story chilled you, hit subscribe, tap the bell icon, and join me next time as we uncover another mystery, a case even colder, and a truth even harder to believe. Because somewhere, another person just vanished, and their story deserves to be told.